It is, Your Excellencies, I greet you all, and may I just take the liberty of greeting a representative from my country, our ambassador, Mrs. Rachel Nomonde Rasmani, who is one of my bosses as well. So I thank you for the opportunity of being here, but I can assure you that I do not speak on behalf of the South African government. I speak as an independent human rights commissioner, and I speak without fear, favor, or prejudice, and I speak in the name of human rights. Excellencies, as we move towards the 70th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which is coming upon us on the 10th of December 2018, we gather here together and recommit ourselves to restore faith in humanity by treating everybody with compassion and human dignity. And I think that's fundamental. In relation to the presentations that were made here, they were very profound and very keen, and I think the message is loud and clear that Ecuador has laid the line of march for all of us, and I think it's a proud moment in our history because 2018 is a tipping year for human rights. We must never forget that even Albert Einstein himself was a refugee too, and the rest is that he made his contributions and left the world in a better place than what he found it in. So I would like to say that the mobility of people across boundaries, as was said earlier on, is as old as humankind. People move to take advantage of increased opportunities out of genuine, free and informed choices. But there are many others who are compelled to move as a result of poverty, lack of decent work, social exclusion, generalized violence, persecution, human rights violations, armed conflict, xenophobia, and environmental degradation. So, in relation to the studies from the Office of the High Commission for Human Rights, it was noted that within the realm of globalization, migration brings opportunities but also important challenges of vulnerability and discrimination. And the study notes that it is imperative to protect human rights of migrants in order to ensure that fostering of social inclusion and integration of migrants, which in turn enables migrants to lead economically productive as well as culturally and socially enriching lives. The study underlines the importance of a human rights-based approach to migration, which will lead to migrants being identified as rights holders who have a claim to certain entitlements. The study notes that the rights-based approaches works towards strengthening the capacities of rights holders and to make their claim, and of duty bearers to meet their obligations. It is thus imperative for migration to be viewed from a rights-based perspective, so as to ensure a paradigm shift that views migrants as human beings and possessors of fundamental rights rather than commodities in a global labor market. And a closer look at the Sustainable Development Goals informed by the resolve to treat migrants as rights-bearing human beings reveal that most of the SDGs are applicable to migrants. For instance, Goal 5 of the SDG has a target to eliminate all forms of violence against all women and girls in the public and private spheres, including trafficking and sexual and other types of exploitation. Violence against women and girls remain endemic in many societies, with migrant women and girls often especially subject to violence, harassment, sexual abuse and exploitation. Women and girls in certain situations are considered particularly at risk of being victimized by trafficking. And thus a rights-based approach to migration calls upon states to put in mechanisms to prevent violence at the risk of trafficking of women and girls, especially those who are migrants. And Goal 16 of the Sustainable Development Goals find resonance with migrants as they bear brunt of xenophobia, hostility, and violence. And thus, a human rights-based perspective of migration ensures that states adopt policies and mechanisms to impede, prevent, and prosecute xenophobic and racist violence. In conclusion, The United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights in his report to the Human Rights Council also emphasizes that human rights approach to migration is imperative. He notes that the human rights-based approach to migration should be based on the following principles. And there are 5 principles which I will conclude on. The universality and inalienability. All people, including migrants, are entitled to universal and inalienable human rights. Number 2, indivisibility, interdependence, and interrelatedness. All human rights, whether civil, cultural, economic, political, or social, are indivisible, and the realization of one right often depends, wholly or in part, upon the realization of other rights. 3, the participation and inclusion of migrants are entitled to effective, free, and meaningful participation in decisions that directly affect them. 4, the non-discrimination and equality. Direct and indirect discrimination against migrants should be addressed in laws, policies, and practices as a matter of urgency. And 5, monitoring and accountability. The design and implementation of migration policies should not only be transparent, they should also be translated into the language of the migrant communities and should ensure that migrants have access to mechanisms of redress and remedy. I'd like to take this opportunity, Program Director, to perhaps say that what we need to be doing here is we need to set a mindset that must transform society, secure rights, and restore dignity. And there is a sense of urgency in this because of the Sustainable Development Goals 2030. And we are saying to you, to ourselves today, that perhaps we should have a structured approach where we have a short-term goal, a medium-term goal, and a long-term goal. And our short-term goal should be between 2018 and 2019. And 2020 and 2024 should be the medium-term goal. And 2025 to 2030 should be the long-term goal, where we can benchmark our successes in achieving what we want to do. I think Ecuador has quite admirably led the march in the matter of restoring dignity. For indeed, human rights must be seen as a right to be a human being. And therefore, I would say that 2019 would be perhaps a defining moment and a tipping point for us at the intergovernmental working groups to entrench this as a fundamental principle of human rights and address the issue of mobility and migration. I thank you.